question after Director Damschroder speaks. So Director Damschroder, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It's been about 3 months since I became interim director of the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. As you know, because of the pandemic and Ohioans' great need for unemployment assistance during this time, there have been a lot of questions about the unemployment insurance program within ODJFS, from claimants, from lawmakers, and from you, the members of the media. From the start, I said I would share publicly the facts about Ohio's unemployment insurance program, not just the improvements we've made, but the overpayments as well. The assessment of the fraud and other overpayments, as well as careful checking for accuracy of the numbers, has taken some time. But today, I will share the overpayments issued since the start of the pandemic. The women and men of ODJFS continue to work hard every day to ensure that Ohioans in need receive the money that they deserve. And we continue to work on improvements that involve everything from answering questions in the contact center to clearing up a person's issue on their claim, to enhancing system security with cutting-edge technology to combat fraud. Overall, I believe that the unemployment insurance program is in a much better position than it was a year ago. When the global pandemic hit in March 2020, Ohio's unemployment rate was at its lowest in a decade. Ohio's unemployment insurance program was suddenly charged with the responsibility of paying millions of Ohioans who were suddenly out of work. It's no secret that in the early days of the pandemic, the agency was under tremendous pressure to pay legitimate claims quickly. And ODJFS certainly wanted to do that. Ohioans were hurting. Our system was built for the equivalent of a normal annual rainfall. It was not prepared for a once in 100 years flood called the COVID-19 pandemic. Some people out of work due to the pandemic didn't qualify for traditional unemployment insurance. These restaurant employees, hairdressers, as well as individuals who were self-employed. These Ohioans had jobs that did not contribute to the unemployment system, which left them ineligible for assistance at the beginning of the pandemic. To help, the federal government passed new legislation, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES Act. The CARES Act created a new program for these workers called Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA. Ohio implemented this program in less than 45 days. The CARES Act law also gave extra money each week for every eligible person receiving unemployment in Ohio. It was an extra $600 a week on top of the base unemployment benefits at the beginning of the pandemic. Today, it is an extra $300 a week. This extra money is called Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, or FPUC. As you can imagine, the extra money every week drove up both payments to individuals and overpayments very quickly. Since the passage of the CARES Act, the federal government has extended the pandemic programs and monetary benefits 3 times. This has made up to 79 weeks of federally funded unemployment benefits available to eligible claimants. Because of these extensions, some Ohioans who were laid off in March of 2020 could still be receiving unemployment benefits and the FPUC money today. By contrast, the typical pre-COVID unemployed Ohioan received unemployment for only 14 weeks. To implement these new federal programs, Ohio, like other states, had to implement new systems and programming. That included programming for issuing legitimate payments, putting safeguards in place to prevent improper payments, and providing detailed federal reports. Balancing these items meant Ohio had to build the plane while flying it at the same time. We did not finalize programming of federal reporting changes until recently to include the FPUC portions of fraud and non-fraud overpayments. This is the reason that the numbers you will hear today will be larger than the numbers that ODJFS has reported in the past. Before I get into the actual numbers, let me explain the distinction between a fraud overpayment and a non-fraud overpayment. Understanding these two terms will be important to understanding the data. To be eligible for unemployment insurance, you must be unemployed through no fault of your own. That is the foundation of the federal state program. Fraud is a legal term. It is a crime. And it means that an individual intentionally carried out a deliberate plan to be paid unemployment money so that he or she was not entitled to. It also means that the agency has made a factual determination based on its review of the claim file. Conversely, non-fraud overpayments happen by mistake. This can be a mistake by an employer, a claimant, or the agency. One example of a mistake by a claimant is misunderstanding the rules and not reporting earnings in a weekly claim because they had not yet actually received their paycheck for that week. An example of a mistake by the agency is clearing an eligibility issue on a benefit claim and enabling payment without thorough review due to the high claims volume during the pandemic. An example of a mistake by an employer during the pandemic is not timely reporting an employee's wages to allow for an accurate benefit decision. The overpayment numbers that I will outline are large. There is no getting around that fact. Since we are one of the first states to publicly discuss the impact of overpayments, and because each state takes a different approach, accurately compare our numbers to those of other states. But it is clear that wide-scale fraud and overpayments have been experienced nationwide during this global pandemic. No state has been immune. That being said, total fraud overpayments in the traditional unemployment insurance program from the beginning of the pandemic through the first quarter of 2021, including the FPUC money, amount to approximately $21 million. Total non-fraud overpayments in the traditional unemployment insurance program from the beginning of the pandemic through the first quarter of 2021, including the FPUC money, amounts to about $457 million. Total fraud overpayments in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, the program for the self-employed, gig workers, and others who did not qualify for the traditional unemployment insurance program from the beginning of the pandemic through February 2021, including the FPUC money, amounts to just under $441 million. Total non-fraud overpayments in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program from the beginning of the pandemic through February 21, including the FPUC money, amounts to $1.2 billion. Again, it has taken some time to analyze, validate, and report these numbers to the Federal Department of Labor. Although the data validation process took over a month, I can now say with confidence that the reports were amended and filed with the Federal Department of Labor are accurate and reliable. We still have a group of claims with suspected fraud indicators that need to be reviewed before we make a final decision. The overpayment numbers will grow as the claims are reviewed. We will continue to be transparent about all of these numbers. As you know, the Ohio Auditor of State has the duty to audit the financial records of all state agencies. In the course of its single state audit for the last fiscal year, the timing of which coincided with the height of the pandemic, the auditor rightfully questioned the accuracy of the agency's overpayment reporting tools in the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. When I accepted this role, I made it clear to our team that fixing the items identified by the Auditor of State is an absolute priority, and we will continue to be transparent. Here are some other examples of our recent progress, our overall continued effort for improvement. In partnership with the Ohio Business Roundtable, our Public-Private Partnership Team, or P3 team, was created. The P3 team has made great improvements since beginning its work in February. As you know, the P3 team works hand in hand with our team at ODJFS. The P3 team consists of about 15 core experts. In addition, there are about 30 other subject matter experts from 12 private companies in the banking and insurance industries who have loaned their help. And this P3 team has improved everything from the call center to the claims process to anti-fraud measures in cooperation with the existing ODJFS team. We now answer Ohioans' questions faster than ever before. Our average wait time is about 10 minutes in the contact center. That's compared to January, when it might have taken a few hours to get through to someone at peak times. And we're making huge progress in the claims backlog. The P3 team, working with ODJFS, has eliminated the non-fraud claims backlog for 2020, and we're on track to clear the 2021 non-fraud backlog in the coming weeks. We now have 880 adjudicators working, the highest number since the pandemic started, so that legitimate claimants can receive benefits as quickly as possible. Workflow and systems have been improved. And we've enacted effective, cutting-edge anti-fraud technology that's working. And we're now using Experian and LexisNexis and as well as other technologies, all of which have greatly reduced the number of fraudulent applications. The number of new claims being filed has dropped 90%. The peak of more than 100,000 new claims filed per day in February dropped to less than 10,000 new claims filed per day in April. In short, we have learned and improved through this unprecedented experience. So what happens next? Well, we are currently working on a waiver policy for non-fraud overpayments. That policy must align with federal law and guidance, some of which was only issued recently. This may allow us to establish blanket waivers to individuals who have been overpaid through no fault of their own in certain circumstances. We'll have more information on that soon. We're in a different stage of the pandemic this year. Ohio is now in the stage of recovery. Nearly 5 million Ohioans have been vaccinated. Our unemployment rate is 4.7% compared to the national unemployment rate of 6%. Ohio's economy is getting stronger. However, at a time when employers are telling us that their businesses are bouncing back, they are struggling to find workers. What is clear is that workers are no longer out of work because of the pandemic shutdown. The federal assistance, the extra $300 a week in FPUC payments, is now discouraging some people from returning to work. And that assistance has always been intended to be temporary. As the governor announced last Thursday, we will be notifying the federal government that we will be ending FPUC as of June the 26th and returning to pre-pandemic monetary benefits. This will give recipients the time to get vaccinated and continue to look for work. Ohio's premier job matching site, OhioMeansJobs.com, is available for all Ohioans seeking work and right now lists more than 180,000 job openings. More than half of those pay $50,000 a year or more. It also provides tools for Ohio job seekers to brush up their interview skills and resume writing. We will continue to make our unemployment insurance programs as efficient, reliable, and fraud-proof as possible. We have made tremendous progress, and our work for improvement continues every single day. I'm happy to take your questions at this time.
Director, your first question is from Laura Bischoff with Gannett Newspapers here in Columbus.
Hi, Laura.
Hey, sorry, I had trouble unmuting. So of the overpayments where you haven't, that's the bulk of it, you haven't been able to determine that it's definitely fraud, or you have ruled out fraud for those payments?
Thank you, Laura. For the non-fraud overpayments in both the traditional unemployment insurance program as well as the pandemic uninsurance program, there's a lot of different reasons why a claim could be considered a non-fraud payment. As I mentioned, there's examples where the claimant could make a mistake, the employer could make a mistake, or the agency could make a mistake. There's also instances where a claim has been paid initially and then is stopped. The payment is stopped for future claims, future weeks, because of a fraud flag. And in some cases, because of the volume of activity at the agency around unemployment through the pandemic, when the fact finding was sent out, instead of adjudicating it as claim, the time lapsed and the agency was just able to deny the claim. Those things would also be considered as a non-fraud overpayment. But you are correct that the bulk of the overpayments are in the non-fraud overpayment category for both systems.
A quick follow-up: how much has the state borrowed for the unemployment compensation system?
To date, we have borrowed approximately $1.471 billion.
Director, your next question is from Bennett Haberly with WBNS TV in Columbus.
Hi there, can you guys hear me okay?
Sure can.
Director, I want to touch on something the auditor had said recently with regard to they're looking into what ODJFS knew and when with regards to the scope and scale of the fraud last summer. They were saying at best that ODJFS was not fully transparent, and perhaps at worst, some may view it as being deceptive in terms of not being fully transparent about how bad the fraud was last summer. I know the auditor's office has said that working with you and some of the other administrators now, they have a good working relationship. But I'm wondering, how do you go about doing damage control for something like that that could undermine the public trust in an agency that people might already be frustrated with?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think the most important thing that the agency can do right now to establish confidence on the part of claimants is to make sure that legitimate claims are paid as quickly as possible. And our focus right now is kind of on the three-part mission of resolving the backlog, improving contact center times, and making sure that we reduce the amount of fraud that's coming into the system. We're making progress on each of those three kind of legs of the stool. My charge to the staff going forward is to make sure that we are transparent, cooperative, and responsive with each of the auditor's requests. And we're working very closely with his office going forward on both the performance audit that his office is engaged in, as well as the additional Chapter 117 audit that he's working on.
Director, your next question is from Sid Standifer with Eye on Ohio from Cleveland.
Hi, thank you for being available to talk to us today. My question is about the PUA overpayment waiver system. Why, when the federal government approved overpayment waivers for PUA in December, has it taken until at least mid-May to roll out a waiver system? And what should people who are being hit with overpayments of $20,000 or more do in the meantime?
Thank you for that question, and certainly for individuals who have experienced an overpayment, again, certainly by no fault of their own, as hard as it is to hear, the best thing I can say is hold tight. We are working on the policy. We've just recently received guidance from the Department of Labor, and as soon as we have a policy in place and a means of accepting waiver applications, we will reach out to every person in that category so that they have the information they need in order to either understand if there's a blanket waiver or the process for applying for a waiver.
Director, your next question is from Jeremy Pelzer from Cleveland.com in Cleveland.
Hi, Director. I wanted to ask of this money, both the fraudulent overpayments and non-fraudulent overpayments, how much of this money can you get back? Is this money all lost, or have you been able to reclaim some of this money? Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. As a part of our overall work with the P3 team, we have established a pillar to work with the federal law enforcement and have engaged the services of David DeVillers, the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Ohio, to assist us in being the intermediary between the state agency and the federal law enforcement agencies who have primary jurisdiction for fraud in this area. So we'll have more information on that as it becomes available. But really, for the first time, because of the work that Mr. DeVillers is providing for us, we have a direct link between the agency where the information is kept and being processed and the federal law enforcement agencies that will be responsible for actually investigating and potentially down the road prosecuting.
Director, your next question is from Josh Swigert with the Dayton Daily News in Dayton.
Hi, Director. How are you?
Josh, good.
So make sure I understand this $1.5 billion in non-fraud overpayments. This is money that was paid to people that shouldn't have been. Is it your anticipation that any of that's going to be reclaimed, the non-fraud stuff, or is your expectation is that $1.5 million is all going to be forgiven?
Yeah, so great question, Josh. And I think the answer is it's going to depend. There's, certainly overpayments that were made. There are opportunities for collections, but the federal rules also allow for an opportunity for waiver when when the error is on the agency's part or when it's, essentially the right thing to do. And there's some rules around how that works. So, kind of our first step was to quantify the problem. And now we can move to the phase of what is the policy to rectify the non-fraud overpayments and how do we work this through with Ohio claimants.
Is that blanket waiver seeking to waive the whole $1.5 billion, or how's the blanket waiver work?
Sure. So it's again, from an Ohio policy standpoint, we have not made those decisions yet. So it would be, I think, premature for me to get into how it would work or where cutoffs might be. And certainly we'll have a lot of conversations with stakeholders about what that will look like in the future. But as soon as we have that in place, we'll certainly let everybody know.
Director, your next question is from Roxanne Elias from WTOL TV in Toledo.
Hey there, thank you. I am still getting a lot of people saying they're having a difficult time getting to, unemployment, someone to speak to, and getting their benefits, and sometimes going as far as even giving up. And then I was also told that because of this fraud that's happening, that those issues were being prioritized and perhaps putting some of these other people on the back burner. So I guess, what would be your advice for people that are still having a hard time trying to get a hold of unemployment or even try to resolve what's going on, for them?
Sure. So the best advice I can give, and really my urging, would be to eligible Ohioans to not give up. We understand that this has been a very difficult time for individuals who are eligible and deserve their unemployment benefits, and we are making significant strides to improve our processes. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of contact center activities, we are much better off than we were even 4 months ago in terms of wait times and getting directly to an agent. There's certainly more work to be done, but I would just say to that person, please don't give up. Please keep working with us. And we're not going to, we're going to run all the way through the tape on all of these things. And so whether it's fraud detection, adjudication, appeals, making sure Ohioans get the dollars that they deserve, we're not going to stop until it's all finished.
Thank you.
Director, your next question is from Spencer Hickey from Hannah News Service in Columbus.
Thank you. Director, you earlier mentioned the amount of money that Ohio has borrowed from the federal government. Governor DeWine had proposed using money from federal stimulus support to pay some of that back. Could we get an update on what the status of that is, especially since more money may have been drawn down from the feds?
Well, I think the best update that I can provide at this point is that conversations are ongoing between the administration and the General Assembly on that. I think the important thing to remember, I guess the three important things to remember are, that we will continue borrowing from the feds to continue to pay claims, and so we're not making the amount any less day by day. The other two important things to remember are, that there are dates that we trigger, that if we pay off the loan by a certain date, our interest payments to the federal government are waived. And then also certain trigger dates by which, if the balance in the fund is zero, that taxes on Ohio employers are not triggered. So the conversations are ongoing between the administration and the General Assembly. And I think everyone understands the importance of resolving this and the opportunity that we have with the federal dollars to take care of it.
I'm sorry, I completely lost your sound there. Could you repeat that? I just got back in and missed pretty much everything you just said to my question. I'm
Sure.
Sorry, everyone.
The best answer I can give at this point is that the administration and the General Assembly are working very closely together in resolving this issue and addressing the trust fund borrowing. It's important to remember that there are dates in the future by which there are benefits to the state and to rectify this issue, including having the debt paid down that will hold us harmless for interest payments, and then triggering dates to have the balance at zero that will keep taxes from increasing on Ohio employers.
Your next question is from Kevin Landers with WBNS TV in Columbus.
Hello, Director. The administration was warned prior to the pandemic that if it didn't have enough experienced call takers, what promises can you make to Ohioans that ODJFS will not be in that predicament again, and that you will have people in place who are properly trained to handle the complexities of unemployment? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Great question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, our system is built for annual rainfall, and this was really a 500-year flood. And so I think the lessons, I think there's two things we're working on right now on parallel tracks. One is addressing the short-term issues, again, around adjudication, contact center, and fraud remediation. But the other parallel track is making sure that we institutionalize the lessons that we've learned and the changes that we've made, so that those things aren't lost, not only from just the ordinary unemployment system when we return to a steady state post-pandemic, but also for the next uptick. Might not be a pandemic, might be a recession, but we're going to make sure we've learned those lessons for the future.
Director, your next question is from Karen Kassler with Ohio Public Radio and Television in Columbus.
Hi, Director. I just wanted to ask, so there was a little bit of attention paid to the unemployment system when you first came in, or when the DeWine administration first came in, about how the case administration had not updated what was happening and not moved to the cloud and that sort of thing. How far back did that set you? And have you now gotten to the point where you feel that you've proceeded beyond that? Are you on the cloud? Are you able to update more frequently and really move forward with what you're doing?
Thanks, Karen. Great question. So Ohio's legacy mainframe system that supported its traditional unemployment insurance system still exists to this day for the traditional unemployment side of our operations. We have a project underway that began during the end of the previous administration that we are working towards having fully rolled out on the benefits side towards the end of Q4 of 2022. On the PUA, the kind of new program that the federal government stood up for people who are traditionally not eligible for traditional unemployment, the state of Ohio had to go out and emergency procure a separate standalone system to be able to process and handle those claims. Certainly because of the legacy nature of our system, other states that had already advanced their systems to the cloud were more quickly able to adapt to that new program and reporting requirements. And certainly that played an impact in our ability to respond at the very beginning of the pandemic.
Seeing no more questions in the chat, I think we can wrap this up. I am happy to follow up with any reporter who has other information they need. Thank you very much for your time and attention today.